Hello, everybody. Today is June 19th, 2025. It is 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here in East Tennessee. So, I want to start out today with today's holiday. If you don't know, it's Juneteenth, which is the celebration of the Emancipation Proclamation and the end of slavery in the United States. But what's interesting about this holiday, they choose the arrival of a General Gordon to Galveston, Texas to enforce the Emancipation Proclamation, which did not end slavery in the United States. The 13th Amendment to the Constitution did. And I think the modern left likes to push this holiday versus celebrating the actual official event of passing that because they're lefties, they're anti-constitutional, and showed that the system worked to get there because the House, the Senate, and the state legislatures passed it and banned it permanently during Reconstruction. And that really should be the celebration of it, because even though there was Emancipation Proclamation, you had West Virginia, Kentucky, Missouri, states that were in the Union but still were slaves, and the Emancipation Proclamation didn't apply to them. So, very interesting situation. But if the African American community chooses that day to celebrate it, don't have a problem with it. We need a day to celebrate the emancipation of the slaves, without a doubt. It's just very curious to why they would pick that specific event versus the actual ending of slavery. So I just wanted to throw a comment on that. So we'll jump right in here with Powell. So Jerome Powell refuses to change interest rates again. Unbelievable. So here's my comment on it. Trump says we could go down 200 basis points. I agree. I wouldn't do it overnight, but I would. Because the metrics the Fed uses still with employment, and we're not in the 80s and 90s. We don't have that industrial economy. We have a credit serviced economy. And we now know it doesn't matter who runs government. Republicans aren't even cutting spending. So we need to finance debt. And we need to do that with low interest rates. Not to mention, we've argued that we've had a massive transfer of wealth, particularly in the Obama and Biden administrations, of the inflation of assets, whether it's the stock market, housing, real estate, whatever, to coincide with the inflation. Okay? You see, the inflation hurt them too. They're paying more for eggs, meaning like wealthier people, eggs, milk, energy, etc. But they can absorb it, especially when their portfolios are going up. The value of their house is going up more than the cost. So they have had a net increase in net worth. While average household families in the United States, 75 grand, are not. And they're getting more on credit cards, and they can't afford a house now and a car loan, okay? So we have to bring down these rates. And the employment numbers are good enough to justify lowering the rates, and definitely inflation with month over month and year over year being in a normal realm. In this credit service economy, to have rates where they are is not necessary. We can bring them down a little bit. We don't have to go to zero like the financial crisis, but we have to bring them down. And I believe his decision is purely political, because it's the kind of scumbag was. He was extremely reactive to what was going on so that the Democrats and the Biden administration can implement their policies. Anything that would make Trump look good, or the Republicans, he won't do it. So I thought I'd throw he's left the door open end of the year, but let's see what happens there. Next thing, Benny Johnson, Board of Czar. Tom Homan says ICE will continue performing raids on farms and hotels. It's illegal to knowingly hire an illegal alien. We're going to continue doing worksite enforcement operations even on farms and hotels. And rightfully so. The law should be applied equally. And we also know it's beneficially, right? There was an article, I believe it was NBC News, talking about a meatpacking plant in Nebraska where a couple days after the raids, coming in for jobs, right? They might have to pay a little bit more, but that's better for the community. They have real active jobs, actual supply and demand wages, okay? Not artificially done, okay? You're talking 14 hours, dollars an hour versus $16 an hour, okay? What? That's not going to impact the huge price on the sheer volume that these huge big ad companies use, okay? Very important. And it's more important to have a citizenry that has sufficient income to take care of its means. Okay? This is also where it ties in with the previous story we were talking about with lowering rates and opportunity for people. Plus, you can't just pick and choose. You either broke the law or you didn't. And if you really want to be efficient, not to just fix the problem, have these deportations, but prevent it from happening again when another Democrat president tries to flood it in, okay, you have precedent and you were equal about solving the problem. You can't just make an exception for one group of people to another, okay? One, that would be, I guarantee that would be upheld in the courts, because you can't say, well, these illegal immigrants are good, but these illegal immigrants aren't better. That wouldn't fly. So I'm glad we're doing that. Also, Kristi Noem has got a waiver for some, I guess, environmental impact and things getting up, so that wall is going to start going up really fast now. So that's good. Shouldn't have had to have been. They got most of it. It should have been completed in the Biden administration, but that'll be good going up there to start. So this is a key area where we're winning. So with everything going on in the world, I didn't want to not focus on particularly these things going forward. You know, Trump did do that feeler. We might do it exceptions. He got hammered on social media. I think he was ratioed on his own account. That tells you the power that we have, and it's really important to continue to do that. So even when Trump floats out, and a lot of times it's floaters, and to see what's going on in his reaction, right? Because we know what the Tillises and the Grahams want, right? Oh, more illegal immigrants, right? You know. So I thought I'd share that tweet with you. So another part on the agenda, Robert Barnes reposting Zero Hedge. General Mills announces removal of synthetic food dyes, starting with cereals. Very important. Okay, and we got this with Kraft, Heinz, and others. They've been doing this. We get reports of this all the time. What's very interesting, even without any legislation or rules, companies are just doing it before, right? As Andrew Breitbart said, it's like all politics rolls down from culture. Okay, and just like, you know, with like Pride Month this month, right, is much less in the corporate world and the stores. It's not got the Oreos bombarded with it, right? Because of the election and the impact of us, we've slowed that down. No rules were passed, right? But the sentiment has changed. So these companies, these corporates, because they're worried about their profits and everything, so they're going with the wind, right? And they're going and they're doing this. And it's really important because we always study, well, this chemical, this vaccine, this particular product. We never take the totality, right? Our kidneys, liver, they filter things, right? But they can only do so much. You know, it's like why in France, higher smoking rate, they have less cancer, right? Because they don't have other additives. It's like it's just the smoking their body's focusing on, right? Here, it's like all these vaccines, all these dyes, all these chemicals, all these additives. None of them you can pronounce, right? But in the totality. So if we can get these out, it makes our bodies and systems more efficient. So that when we do have something, maybe we're less likely to get a cancer, maybe we're less likely to get type 2 diabetes. And some of the things and ailments you do have, right, your body's more efficient at dealing with that. So it's a very good way. And it will lower overall healthcare costs in the United States and make us more productive as a people, society, healthier, just way to go. So this is a good win for Make America Healthy again, and it's another front, you know, with all the big news out there. You don't want to lose track of some of the quote-unquote little things that are going on in some of the areas where we're winning. All right, and on the same front, I'm proud to announce with Secretary Kennedy and NIH Director I think it's Bhattacharya, that the Trump administration is launching a program to study long-term health effects of the chemical spill in East Palestine, Ohio, and help residents access the care they need. East Palestine, we will never forget you, and rightfully so. First thing I want to say about this, Trump and JD went there in the early part of the campaign, and right after it happened. Was it good politically? Yes, but he's kept his promise, and that's the key thing here. Also, we want to know, just for compensation sakes and the actions, what happened, how this community, the water, how far did it go, how these people are impacted. Not just so we can make them whole again because of the injustices that they suffered, but also as the knowledge to go forward that we can't just light this thing on fire again. We can't do these kind of things. And it sets a template for environmental disasters going forward. So this is a win-win for everybody in this situation. I would also like to see more people accountable in this whole decision process that went into this whole situation, which is very suspect. So, but this is another MAHA victory for us here. So, all right, moving on to the big elephant in the room. Mark Levin, the Iranian regime must be destroyed. I'll say it out loud again. The Iranian terrorist regime must be destroyed. So Robert Barnes says, it's hard to imagine something worse than the current regime. The same claim made before every failed war. It's a dangerous lack of imagination or simply historical knowledge. Exactly. All right, let's start. We get involved. We hit. Okay, what are they going to retaliate? We have bases in Syria, Iraq. We had issues with the Houthis off of Yemen hitting our ships. We have ships there. Is Iran going to shut down the Strait of Hormuz? What about, how's that going to affect oil prices? What happens if there's a civil war in Iran? We have multiple ethnic groups in Iran, and they break down. Is the regime next involved going to be worse than this regime? What kind of person will take power? How many refugees will flood to Europe? How many terrorist organizations will come out of a destabilized Iran? Maybe be allied with terrorist organizations in other countries. Maybe terrorist organizations from other countries come into that. We don't know. What we do know is they have enriched uranium up to 60%, which is not against nuclear non-proliferation treaty. Okay, matter of fact, Israel doesn't officially have nukes, but everyone does they do, and they haven't signed that treaty. So the other two countries, India and Pakistan, and they admitted it, and that's the reason why they didn't sign it, because they knew they were both pursuing it because they're historical enemies. But Israel, in this case, is a nation that is going to, if you're, Robert Barnes called it strategic empathy. They saw the Libyan situation where Gaddafi gave up his nukes, and a decade later he's dead, and North Korea got nukes, and they're sitting there fine. All right, and look, country to the west of them, Iraq, invaded by the United States. Afghanistan, country to the east of them, invaded by the United States. Then you have other nations such as Syria destabilized, like I already mentioned, Libya. So they have a position to be in there, okay, to consider it of what's going on. Yes, are they supporting Hezbollah and whatever they are? Because they have a history of supporting Shia groups, particularly Shia minorities, that have been looking for help, like Houthis against Yemen, and the Yemeni civil war against the Saudi Arabians. So you have to put all these in context. And all these things come into play because you got to understand what goes on. Is Iran a regime I want to live in? Of course not. But we also go, I heard someone on radio talking about women in a bikini. What? I also heard other people that 20-30% of women, particularly in rural areas, don't even wear anything, the hijab or the burqa. Okay? And you can make the argument in the West. Well, half your country thinks you can change your gender, and half your country kills babies up to the 9th month and sometimes after they're born. So the moral equivalency judgment isn't there. Look at the mullahs as simple as this, is that instead of having a constitution, it's like we would have, let's say, the Bible. They have the Quran and the mullahs, and they run it. They have elections, they're more domestically, whatever, and they're more sophisticated of a society than people realize. Now, do they have the liberal rights we have in the West? No, they do not. But that is not a reason to go to war, especially since they have not attacked anybody. And last I checked, a nation is allowed to supply another nation with weapons. Hezbollah is basically the Lebanon. And they do that. And Hamas is the legal elected authority of Gaza. And they supplied them. The United States gave them money too. Why? Because they're the governing authority. And countries can do that. So I'm trying to figure out, it's just the United States being unilaterally, again, going to do this without thinking through what's going to happen, the ramifications. And that's a key thing. And then you have the geopolitical global situation that could spar. So what am I talking about? All right. Oh, before I get into that. So this was an interesting tweet. Trump wants to strike Iran only if the U.S. can destroy the Fordow enrichment facility with the bunker bomb. The Pentagon concluded earlier this year they don't go deep enough, and totally destroying Fordow requires a tactical nuke. The last part, tactical nuke, not going to discuss it because it cannot happen. Next, I watched a thing with a professor, I believe it was Postal, from MIT on Colonel Davis's show, and very astute about this and how weapons work. Basically, it's called unhomogenized concrete. And think of it as like galvanized metal, like rigidity on there. It causes deflections of these bunker busters. So it doesn't reach the 200 feet that it says. It slows down, it gets diverted. So it's not going to reach that. And if you know that and know how to defend it. Now, apparently the Chinese did a huge study on this and experiments on this. And that's where this idea came from. So if they built these facilities with this, 200 feet's not going to be enough. So now if we go and bomb them, we're not even achieving our goal with all these ramifications that could happen that are negatively afterwards. Okay? You know, so like they got missiles, man. We lost that 2 F-A-18 Hornets because of Houthi maneuvers because of Houthi missiles. Now imagine 40 ballistic missiles coming at an aircraft carrier. Okay? I don't want to be in that boat. Plus all the little bases, Jordan, Syria, Iraq, the Shia groups in those areas. All right? So, again, you can't even guarantee you're going to achieve your initial goal of taking these out. So, and then you make the, oh, they want, I believe when you start bombing people, that might galvanize their country. Okay? All right? So, you don't know. So, anyway, so I want to show that. So, the geopolitical. So, breaking. 2 Chinese electronic surveillance ships, 855 and 815A, are in the Persian Gulf. Well, what? Now, 3 nights ago, a very large Chinese military cargo plane landed in Tehran. 2 nights ago, 2 of them landed in Tehran. I know one didn't fly back, so I don't know what was done, whatever. So you got that, surveillance ships. Now, Russia's bogged in Iran, and I know the Israelis and the Russians agreed because there is a definitely non-military nuclear site, meaning it's a nuclear plant for domestic energy above ground where there are Russian engineers assisting them. And the Israelis promised their safety there. They could stay and work, whatever, because they're not interested in hitting that, at least at this point. You know, full-out war is full-out war. But that's it. But these are the other ramifications. What role is China playing? What kind of aid is going? What have they decided? Are they going to back Iran? Should this escalate? Like, I just feel like these things are not being considered. Conservative Inc., like Hannity, and I think it's 1992. Bomb them. They're bad. It's the same arguments, the same nonsense. Don't they learn? So, with everything else going on, let's move on to a little Ukraine, since everybody's forgetting it. So, I got 3 slides with the impact of where it's going. This is down in the southwest Donetsk. Russia took a huge town there. Now, if you didn't know this, there was a big German article in Welt where they said about Russia's getting 15 to 20 kilometers per day. Now, that's not all along the front. That is square kilometers per day. But considering this type of warfare, that's an acceleration. And they've also stated, which I think we kind of knew a little bit, is that the 4th line of defenses, Russia accelerated so much that Ukraine could not really complete those. So, and I'll show you what's going on, in particularly in the Sumy region. But here's southwest Donetsk, where they're driving northwest and taking some more territory there. This is Dnipro-Petrovsk. Now, this is the one I've been talking about that is just north of Zaporozhye and northwest of the Donetsk province. And they're moving from Orachova, I believe is the name of the town, west, and they've entered Dnipro-Petrovsk and taken a village there and moving on to another. Now, this is not one of the 4, just like Sumy is now not one of the original 4. Okay, so this is them driving, west beyond Donetsk and really stretching that line for the Ukrainians. All right, and then this is up in the Sumy. Now, if you see this one picture on the left with the white line going all around it, from, let's say, the top of the Russian flag, if you draw a line all the way to that D to the right of that white line, anything north of it is what Russia had before the offensive of Sumy about a month ago. Now, this is all territory they've taken within a month. And the picture on the right is a focus on the left there. Okay? Now, what's going on is because they haven't been able to do that 4th line, Ukraine is just throwing everything they have, and that's what this map is illustrating, these strikes on these villages and counterattacks by Ukraine. It's just not working. And they're getting thrown to the meat grinder. So now, how does Iran and Ukraine come into be and all these things going to be in this situation. These are all things you have to calculate, okay? And you have to remember, put yourself in their shoes, see what their concerns about, what has history told us, what is this country? That's why the Tucker interview with Cruz, how many people are in the country? That's relevant. You need to know. You can be off by 10 million. Does it have 10 million? Does it have 100 million? That makes a big difference. All right, what are the ethnic groups? Remember, this is the stuff that we do. We just go in with pure humility, hubris, lack of history, and huge assumptions about a country. I used to do it too. I was a Fox News guy years ago, and I used to believe all the crap. And then you really go into the history, and you really go into what's going on, and you actually get news from outside of the United States. It's always Putin said this, or the Ayatollah said this. But when you actually go to like Wyon, Indian news, or other news, you read the whole story, or you see the whole video clip. That's why when I read Putin, I don't get clips. I read the whole thing. It's like, oh, okay. And he says the same thing and the same thing and the same thing and the same thing. And you go back, it's the same crap. And all the people in their administration, the same thing. Okay? And then you see the other people's point of view of the world, that it is not this good and evil. That's what we do. That's what Panany and Levin do. They put everything in good, evil, like a World War II camp with, Hitler and that, like Stalin was great, but we allied with him, right? Because of the Nazis. That is not this. That is not this. And there's the land disputes with Israel and the Palestinians who lived there forever, along with Jewish people forever. Okay? And there were wars, and they're living in occupation without a country. Of course there's going to be conflict. Look at Northern Ireland. Look at Kosovo. Look at every place. There's going to be conflict. And in none of these cases, they're Muslims, and in the north, they're Shia Muslims. And Iran is going to support them. That's not shocking. This isn't crazy. They're not supporting ISIS. Matter of fact, they were attacking ISIS and that group. I even believe Iran shared intelligence with the Russians and the Americans during that conflict. So you have to go out of the box of the Fox News and all this and really do your own research and listen to the people and get on other platforms. That is the key of the news, So, I learned so much over the last 2 years, but I've changed my views on so many things. But the ironic thing, it all falls under the constitutionalist, conservative populist, constitutional ideology that it always belonged to. And it fits. Right? We do not go overseas looking for monsters to destroy. John Adams, that is us. So anyway, I thought I'd share you some other news that was out there, the Fed and the immigration stuff. Not forget some of our victories. Also, we had that great 6-3 court decision on the transgender kids. The state of Tennessee has the constitutional right to protect their children from abuses of, especially a new procedure that are permanent, right? If a kid can't make a decision to buy alcohol, vote, whatever, okay, they have to get school notes, take an aspirin, things like that. They definitely should not have a permanent procedure like that, especially the insanity, especially a trend. And the state has to do it. I like the fact that it's the state doing it more so than the federal government. Because I'm not a big fan of the precedence of the federal government getting in that kind of realm. And I understand that argument, but the state of Tennessee made a moral decision, and it was upheld 6-3. So that was good. So anyway, I'll keep an eye on, see what happens on the economic front. Any more news coming out there? Updates on Russia and Ukraine. I'm still following that even with the big elephant in the room. Matter of fact, I saw less postings and stuff with Iran stuff going. I'm like, what's really? I need a little more details on Ukraine more. So it's a little harder to find some stuff. Keep an eye on any news on the immigration front, the protests going on. Everybody's getting that news too as well. So that's important. And see if there's any other geopolitical moves. I'm paying attention to how China, Russia, other countries are reacting to this situation, the missile strikes. So a lot to follow. There's also a Dutch election coming up soon because Geert Wilders dissolved his party, pulled out of the coalition. So it caused a snap election over immigration. So we'll be following that. Checking on what other European elections are coming up as well that I like to keep track of. So anyway, you can follow me on my X at PatriotPlanner1, on my Getter at PatriotPlanner. Again, at PatriotPlanner1, at PatriotPlanner. And if you like this video, please like it, follow the channel, and share it. All right, thanks a lot, and have a great weekend, everybody. I'll put another video out next week, so major. Maybe I'll hop on and do another one, but I'll definitely be on next. All right. Have a good night.